I think the reason why Putin agreed to this is because he views this as a no-lose situation. He's going to win no matter how this thing comes out. President Trump, on the other hand, I think has unwittingly put himself in a no-win situation. He's going to lose almost no matter what happens here, because it's clear that President Trump just wants the war to end. Good on that. I'm for that. I'm for anything that's going to end this war, even if it's on bad terms, because a bad term ending is better than this stupid continuous war with continuous death and bloodshed on all sides of this conflict that we have right now. At least there's a chance to work on something to sustain the cessation of hostilities afterwards. But we got to get there first. For Putin's side, first of all, I think that he realizes that if he comes to this meeting and says to the world, listen, I'm doing everything in my power from a position of clear military superiority, economic superiority, diplomatic superiority. Everything is in our favor. We don't have to talk, as you mentioned a second ago. We can just keep fighting, but we are. And I'm now going to meet face to face with the leader of the Western side. And I'm willing to say, hey, there's some things that we're willing to give you, but there's some big things we're not willing to. This is what I suspect. Now, the Russian side is, as they always do, is very close to the vest of what they're going to talk about. But there's been some rumors that the Russian side may actually hand over or not take part of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. I personally think that that's a rumor that's not substantiated. That's wishful thinking. I can't imagine that Russia, after having put those countries or those regions into the Russian constitution, is now going to suddenly say, okay, never mind, y'all just go over there and good luck to you. You know, I think that he's going to probably tell Trump behind closed doors, everything I said in June 2024, the year ago, this past June, is still the case today. And that means demilitarization, denazification, definitely no NATO, and the withdrawal to the administrative borders of all four of the provinces. That is our minimum line. I won't accept anything less than that. And if we don't get it, then we'll keep fighting. But we're willing to withdraw from Sumy. We'll withdraw from Kharkiv, maybe Dnipropetrovsk, etc. A few things he can give in on, but I don't think those other ones at home, I don't think Putin can give in on. So if he does come in and say that, then the ball is in Trump's court. Either you accept my terms, or now I keep fighting anyway. And that's what Russia's been saying all year. But now then they have more political cover where it matters the most for Russia, and that is in the global south and in Asia, because they are not looking at this through a Western lens. And to them, that would show, boy, he really did try to meet Putin. So I can understand now why he's going to keep going on, because the Western side is going to continue the war if he doesn't agree to their terms from a position of weakness, which the Western side has. So I don't understand why they would do that. On the other hand, Trump, if let's just say that he gets Putin to agree to that, and that Trump does, and said, all right, you give us back Sumy and Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk, and promise that the war is going to come to an end, or whatever else he would say. Now Trump goes back and he can't sell that to Europe or Ukraine. So then Trump comes off looking weak, like he can't even control our own side. If Trump goes in and doesn't agree to those terms that Putin says, then it looks like we're malcontents and he can't move Putin, because Trump, I believe, thinks that he tells everybody, and I think himself, that he has solved 6 wars already in this administration, and he thinks this is going to be the 7th. He's going to get that Nobel Peace Prize. I think he's already looked and put a place on the wall where he's going to put his plaque. I think he's moving down that path here. But now then, there is no chance that Putin's going to agree to something that the West wants. And if Trump is seen either as not getting Russia or not getting the West to adhere to his desires, he comes off looking bad and weak. And then what would he do if that happens on the Russian side, didn't agree to it? Is he going to keep sanctions going? Is he going to put more sanctions on? That's obviously not going to work, and that's probably why he hadn't done it so far. Is he going to start putting more weapons on the Ukraine side because he's angry at Putin for not doing what he wanted? Well, that's not going to make any difference because we don't have it. We don't have enough to give. So Trump is coming in with a few like 4s and 3s and 2s in his hand, and Putin's got all the face cards. And so I think Trump has set himself up for a real problem here. I don't see how he wins.
Yeah, that's a really great point to keep in mind, because as you were laying it out there, I was thinking, if the U.S. just continues on in the same way, exactly as you were noting, they keep sending more weapons that they have, or at least the ones that they have to give, they keep adding more sanctions. Eventually, there's going to come a point where Kiev's government and military fall apart because they don't have the manpower, they don't have the weapons. Not that that's going to happen overnight, but eventually, right? And On the other hand, if Trump agrees to kind of what Putin is demanding here, which one of those major demands that Russia has brought up over and over again is the importance of Ukraine being a neutral state, right? No NATO membership, yes, but also no NATO propping up Kiev and rearming their military for the next confrontation with Russia. They don't want a Minsk III style agreement. When it comes to Trump's understanding of all of this, do you think he realizes how bad the situation is for Ukraine and therefore for all of NATO if they keep at this, and if they, well, even then, if they don't keep at this, right? It's a bad situation all around.
I think he's aware of the human cost on the Ukraine side. He does, and I've talked to people who've been behind the scenes, and they say he's genuinely motivated by the human cost era. I wish he was motivated by the human cost in the Middle East and Palestine, but that's a separate issue. We'll talk about that another day. But he does seem to really be motivated by the loss on the Ukraine side. But I don't think at all that he himself is understanding the dynamics of this and how he's otherwise. Why would he put himself in this position where he almost can't win now, unless that he sit behind closed doors? He has some assurances from Europe and or Ukraine or just Europe that, hey, listen, I'm going to agree to something like this, and you better get used to it because I'm withdrawing all my support if I don't get this. And you want to go on this by yourself, go ahead, but I'll give you political cover if you want to go with me. Now, if that's the case, that's the one sliver where Trump could come out ahead and this war could come to an end, because then Ukraine would have no choice but to submit, whether they wanted to or not. But I just can't imagine any scenario where Russia, after fighting 3.5 years and in all the superior positions that they're in, to concede anything that's going to allow the Ukraine military and government to continue in its existent state and have any kind of military connection with the outside. That would almost be foolish to do in human terms, in military terms. But you also have to understand, in light of this, in fact, in the days now leading up to this meeting, Russia has been really pushing hard on the battlefront. And over just the last 12 hours, there was a major push 10 kilometers in a single day north of Pokrovsk. And it remains to be seen what the Russians are going to do with this. Why did they have this sudden break in here? I know it's got folks I've talked to and seen on both the Ukraine side and even on surprise on the Russian side that there was a big breakthrough, much bigger than a normal day. And there's also reports that Russia has been moving a lot of forces in the Zaporizhia area behind the scenes, like they're getting ready for a harder push there. They are pushing hard on the battlefront. And if anybody thinks that Ukraine can just keep rolling into 2026 and just keep the war going, listen, I'm not sure that they can last through the end of this year as a coherent military force if something isn't done to end the war here in Alaska. The stakes couldn't be bigger.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that's kind of been Russia's goal, right? They're fighting a war of attrition. They're not just fighting to take territory. They are fighting to wear down Kiev's military to the point where it falls apart. And yet you have Zelensky over here and he still doesn't seem to get it. And I always kind of wonder, you know, when he talks and he's spouting off on social media and saying, oh, we would never stop fighting for this territory, right? We're never going to stop fighting for Crimea, even though it's been reincorporated into Russia since 2014. That's still on his list. I always wonder, okay, does he have the backing of the West, or does he feel like he does? Or is he really spouting off thinking that he can't be easily replaced and that he's not the Western puppet that he truly is? How do you see Kiev's position in this right now? Obviously, Zelensky has not been invited to this summit. So Russia's kind of making it clear, as they have previously, noting that they don't see him as a legitimate leader. He's overstayed his term. They're questioning who's going to sign the deal when there eventually is a deal. And now you have the US coming in. I know there's some reports about the White House possibly sneaking Zelensky into this summit and making sure that he's there. Obviously, they know that that would be a non-starter for Russia. So how do you view the position that Kiev's in? Do they have any autonomy here, any ability to do anything that does not have the West signing off on it at every step, even if Kiev is here falling apart?
You know, my honest opinion, this is not a pejorative. This is just an honest assessment. I think that Zelensky has become delusional. And we've seen it happen in history before, where so much pressure gets put on a leader for so long is that he finally loses the ability to rationally look at a situation. And what he's saying coming out of his mouth, in his heart, he may believe, but his brain is no longer able to process information like maybe it was at another time. And so when he keeps saying this stuff like he did yesterday, that we are not going to give up any territory, completely contradicts what President Trump has to say and about swapping territory or anything else. And he's still talking about, no, we have a complete territorial integrity. Only Russia is at fault for this war, and only they're going to end it on my terms. I mean, that's irrational. No matter whether he's a puppet or not, that's irrational for those words to come out of your leader's mouth, because it simply can't be manifest. You don't have any capacity whatsoever to compel the stronger side to your women. He's talking as though it's like two equal or nearly equal sides, and this is, we're going to be tough, and it's more like this. It's way off the charts down here. Unfortunately, that's echoed by the European Union. They're saying the same things. Territorial integrity, NATO still on the table. The very reason for Russia going into this war at all, there's a number of them, but that was one of the key ones, which they have repeated ad nauseum all 3.5 years since the war started. And now here we keep saying it. I mean, I think on American television yesterday, you had Mark Rutte repeating that. And it just belies any kind of rationale. If Zelensky is delusional, it's hard to say that the European side is delusional, and more likely that they're just callous, and they know they're aware of what's going on. They're aware of what this means, and they're okay with continuing on to keep Ukraine in the fight, because they may calculate, well, that'll continue to harm Russia, and they are morally okay with doing that on the backs and the bones and the blood of the Ukrainian people and the destruction of their country. They're willing to sacrifice everything, knowing where this is going to end, because anyone who can do simple math can see that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia, especially now. If it was less clear in the early part of the war, to me, it was just clear from the beginning. There's no way you could ever think that Russia was going to lose this. But now then, no one can say anything different. Rationally, there is no chance. So if you're now supporting maximalist objectives from the weaker side that no logic can say would be happening, then that, to me, has to mean that you're okay and cognizant of what this is going to mean to the Ukraine people, and that you'll use them up like a wash rag until there's literally nothing left, and then you'll just clap your hands and move on and say, well, darn it, we have it. And then they'll probably say, now we'll keep spending a lot of money, because now then that darn Russian bear is going to come west, and they're going to roll into the rest of Europe, etc. So now then they'll just do that, and they'll use the wreckage of Ukraine as justification. See what they did to them? Now we have to build up even bigger. So I think that's probably the play of Europe. I think it's reprehensible. And plus, I just don't think it's going to work, because they're going to end up cratering their own economies by even trying to go down that path, whereas Russia has clearly retooled its economy and reoriented its economy to where they can sustain themselves in the global south and Asia and elsewhere in the world, not the least of which is India itself. And we're on, sinking sand. And instead of recognizing we're on sinking sand and saying, all right, let's take this brilliant opportunity that Trump has. We can condemn him, whatever, but let's take advantage of it, get this war over with, and stop the bleeding for us, even if you don't care about Ukraine. But it doesn't look to me like they care about their own people or Ukraine. So that's really disturbing to me as an American.